If you want to support the Missing Witches Project, you can do so by buying our book, reviewing it on Amazon and Goodreads, using offer code Missing Witches when you shop at Foxglove Farm. Become a Patreon patron or pick up some Missing Witches merch at TeePublic.
You aren't being a proper woman, therefore you must be a witch. You must be a witch.
Happy Juneteenth! June 19th celebrates the day that the Emancipation Proclamation was read in Galveston, Texas. Now, this happened on June 19th, 1865. The Emancipation Proclamation had been delivered on January 1st, 1863, 2 years earlier, but it took 2.5 years to make it to that last reading in Galveston, Texas. Now I'm going to read a tiny bit of the Emancipation Proclamation, and maybe you can let me know if you think that we've lived up to this. Or maybe let's put it another way. If you think that we have lived up to this, I highly suggest watching Ava DuVernay's documentary 13th. It's free on Netflix. All persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of the state shall be thenceforward and forever free, and the executive government of the United States, including military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons, and will do no act or acts to repress such persons or any of them in any effort that they may make for their actual freedom. Hello to the Missing Witches Coven, and thank you so much, Lakeesha Harris, for joining us today to celebrate Juneteenth.
Juneteenth, Freedom Day.
Freedom Day. Before we get into that, though, for our listeners who haven't heard me gush about you repeatedly on social media and on the podcast before, can you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes. So I am Lakeesha Harris. I am one of the founders of Black Witch University, which started out of Black Witch Chronicles, which was just me and a few of my close friends wanting to put more visibility on the fact that Black witches exist. There's this tendency to say like witchcraft is very Eurocentric idea and notion of self-actualizing power, when it is not. Black witches have existed all along. Forever. And so we started Black Witch Chronicles, which then came a need and a desire from the community to, have us teach about what it means to be a Black witch. So, but also I am a freedom fighter, an abolitionist. I am the director of reproductive health and justice at Women with a Vision here in New Orleans. And for me, those things are very tied together. Like they're all of who I am. And I utilize what I know of being a Black witch for the liberation of Black people. So I think that's me in a nutshell, but also so many things. A mama, a community person. There's so many facets of me, girl. Like, I'd be like, what am I going to be today? And I just be that thing.
What am I going to be today is one of my favorite questions in the whole universe. But that's what drew me. I mean, the first time I discovered your name was that feature in Afropunk. Was it Afropunk?
Yes, Afropunk. Yeah.
And so you see, and the crush is automatic. But when I actually started to dig into your work and see what you were doing, that's when the true love came about. Because part of why I'm drawn to you and your work is because it's so holistic. Obviously the Afropunk aesthetic is there and it's gorgeous, but you're also like a beekeeper. And, as you say,
what am I going to be today?
What am I going to be today? So I guess I'm just kind of like wondering like where you get the energy to start. Where does your power come from?
Well, let me tell you something. I don't sleep. That's part of being a crone and in menopause. I mean, the ancestors are like, well, get up at the witching hour at 2 and 3 a.m. and like go outside and do ritual and, crone things. Uh, no, where does my power? It lies in the ancestors. Like, seriously, I mean, they do a lot of pushing me and speaking to me, and I do a lot of listening, and they provide the tools that I need to keep going forward. I honor them as well as my elders. I sit at the feet of their knowledge whenever I can. Divine spirit people in my community that lead me. That's where my energy comes from. But also, I take very good care of myself. I haven't been so good at doing that lately, so I've been pivoting to recenter what it looks like to care for myself. Exercising, like being very gentle, massage, lightening up, counseling, therapists. A witch needs a good therapist. I just want y'all to know. Like, we have to engage all of our healers. So self-care for me looks like therapy, looks like holding myself accountable, but also being generous with myself to make mistakes, and to, come back to the table and be like, hey, I fucked this up. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cuss, but I am a cuss.
Cuss away. Cuss away.
Yeah, up and like recenter myself in community when I do. So yeah. But I'm also an Aries, and we're fiery. Like, I have a lot of Aries in my chart, in my birth chart. And so I'm just like, I do things like from the head. I'm just like, okay, we're going to plow through this. We're going to get through this. And my intuitive moon of Pisces, like, centers me in a knowing and a deep prophetic knowing that, what to take on and what not to take on. So that blended with the counseling and all the other things I take care of allows me to take care of the bees and the kids and the community.
Yeah. And care and healing is something that is like a main, theme for you. I've been going over and over your chapter in Black Women's Liberatory Pedagogies, and I read you wrote something, and I also heard you say it in an Instagram live, and I've definitely like taken it into my heart as like a personal motto, and I hope you can talk about it a little bit. We talk a lot about safe spaces, but Lakeesha Harris talks about brave spaces.
Yes.
Talk about brave spaces.
Yes. So, like, we cannot create safe enough space, especially being a Black person and being in highly oppressed situations on this land that we know as North America, but also globally, there is no safe space. And so, but we can create brave spaces. And that means like spaces where people can show up as their truest self and feel good about doing that. Right. So, and then it is also brave that we do that, work. It is also courageous that we do that work. So, I don't necessarily believe like any space can be 100% safe, but all spaces can be brave spaces where we can all situate ourselves in courage and be present.
And how can we cultivate those spaces for other people?
Check your privilege. That's number one. And we all have them in different ways. I may be an oppressed Black woman and what all that means. And also there are other oppressed women, like trans women, trans Black women, that I do have a certain level of privilege over, you know, being a cis queer woman, you know. So, you know, I feel like the number one would be like, check your privilege and check in with yourself. And then number two, really listen what the other person is trying to say before inserting your own voice. And to be quite honest, that's really hard when we're engaging with people and we have our own set of experiences around a certain issue. But if we can listen to them and cultivate a better conversation where we're really hearing what it is they need to say and taking that in before inserting our own experiences, which could be true, right? They are true experiences, but listen to their experience. And number three, be helpful to a point where you're actually allowing them to actualize their own power, right? Like when we're creating brave space, we don't want to overgive to the point where the person is powerless. The person has and comes with full grace, full power, full ancestors, full magic. So your job is to, you know, be generous and kind and support that person to actualizing their power. But you don't want to be like so full of power that you're dominating everything around you, you know? So I, you know, as an Aries, give myself grace around that, you know, and also, you know, learning to like pull it back, Aries, pull it back, you know, allow other people room to grow and achieve and actualize their own power. So teaching has been helpful for me, especially teaching witchcraft, you know, to be like, yes, I feel like as one of the heads of this coven, because Black Witch University is a coven. So as the head of one of the heads of this coven or coven mothers, I'm always like so applauding the baby witches, the newer witches that are coming forth. And I'm like, oh, y'all give me so much life. So I guess that's one of the energetic pieces, like watching newer witches come in and like be present. So yeah. So I think those are three things that you can do. And I, you know, am not just the person that coined the term brave space. Activists have been creating brave space for a very, very long time. So there's plenty of literature out there on it, and we definitely have to create those things because, I mean, as long as white supremacy has its hands on things, in particular white men, there's no place safe for us, especially as witches, but we can be brave together.
I think you're right. I think that a lot of times these situations where it's like, oh, I was trying to help, is because we brought the help instead of asking, what help do you need? We came with our version of what whoever needs and sort of put it on them.
Right.
And so the first step.
Baby, I'm not the help. I'm not the help.
Oh, here's what I think you need to do.
Facilitator of you finding your own power, but I am not the help.
So facilitating your own power, can you tell me about like the advent of Black Witch University and how it came to be like a formalized thing?
Yeah, so Black Witch is still being a formalized thing. So know that it has taken years, and I imagine it still is going to take many more years, and hopefully the coven will have it, because I definitely want to release it at some point to other people. So Black Witch University came out of a need and necessity. Again, Black Witch Chronicles was very visible, and the community is like, well, do you teach? And I was like, well, I'm always teaching. Like, but they were specific about like teaching witchcraft from a very Black lens perspective and liberatory perspective. And that is what I teach. I teach what I know. So from a Black feminist, reproductive justice, Black liberation lens, came Black Witch University. And that happened in 2016. I'm originally from Chicago. And so it started in on the lakefront of Chicago, and has expanded or traveled with me to New Orleans, where I just acquired land space and this beautiful barn that I'm recreating so that we can, I can do a lot of hands-on with my students. And then the pandemic happened, and I'm like, oh. But anyway, you know, I'm recreating the barn that is on the land so that it can facilitate, have a classroom space as well as kind of a dormitory space upstairs, and also, you know, yeah, so it has been since 2016. We're now 2021, and it has just grown exponentially. And also, you know, what people look for is, I have one student, because I'm on the conjure course, and it's divided into quarters. So students coming in get first like an understanding of land worship. And we go land worship, deities, like you're rooted in what we came from Africa with, right? And I really am loving what is it? High on the Hog, because it's exactly what I teach in the first quarter. Like, what did we come over here from Africa with? What is it about this land? What is it that our people utilize? What are the herbs? What are the ingredients? How do you pay reverence and veneration to the ancestors? You know, all of that, because, you know, that matters. That is the first crux of it. And then Lorena teaches divination, and she goes over, you know, everything from dowsing to tarot reading, and is working and developing bone reading. So we go through divination in the various ways that you can divine, because I believe you cannot conjure until you can communicate with your ancestors. Like throwing a bunch of spells out there and really not knowing what the people need, and not understanding what the spirits are saying, then I think I know that is not a good mixture. So we're not teaching our students to throw spells. And then for the third quarter, we come through, and then we're teaching root work, conjure, from a Black liberation standpoint. And what I mean by that is, it's not just applied because you don't like somebody. Magic for me is not that way, you know, because that's from a conscience of ego. And it's not from a conscience of community. It's not from a conscience of Black liberation. So how are these spells that I'm going to teach you applied for not just self-gain or self-sustainment, but community sustainment and community gain, and how we get free? And how do we abolish, you know, the prison industrial complex? And how do we keep Black mothers safe in the medical industrial complex, where they are dying exponentially in childbirth, right? How do we keep sex workers safe on the street? And and from police and community members, right? So all of those things for me are wrapped in conjure and Black liberation. And then for the final quarter as a wrap up, we talk about like healing justice as liberation and creating healing justice spaces with what we have taught you. And also, you know, how can you start your own business? A lot of the conjurers that come out of Black Witch University, and I try to post what they're doing, they're entrepreneurs. They may be working a job, but they're also applying liberation to community members, be it via their jewelry making, via healing justice practices they have done, whatever it is, it's being utilized in community. And that is how we've always used it as Black witches. You know, it has been towards, you know, and there's a few that use it for benefit, for their own benefit. But I'm thinking of even Marie Laveau. If you look at what she did, it wasn't just for her benefit. She was helping in a plague. There is stories about her getting, you know, sex workers released in her time from prison and putting up funding for that. Like, right? She was not for play. She was not for doing the work for her own benefit and financial gain. She was doing it for the community. And that is the legacy of liberation. We've always used conjure. In the Haitian Revolution, for instance, you know, conjure, you know, all of that. These are our practices, and they have been our liberatory practices forever. So that is how we teach at Black Witch University. That is how I see it evolving in a space towards liberation, freedom, and healing justice, period, as long as I'm alive. So
liberation, prison reform, all of this makes me think of our sort of overarching theme today, that being Juneteenth and the Emancipation Proclamation, which, I mean, I'm Canadian, but, you know, I think as a whole, it's not something that we have lived up to. Again, you mentioned prison reform. I always like to go back to Ava DuVernay's documentary, 13th, which really, listeners, I kind of forgot you were there for a minute. Listeners, if you haven't seen this documentary, please watch it. It really illustrates how the Emancipation Proclamation comes off as symbolic when gazed through like a modern lens. So
it was symbolic then. I mean, when they did it, I mean, so Juneteenth is the celebration of when enslaved people in Texas were told they were free. Right? It was a long time.
Yeah, and it took
Emancipation Proclamation
2.5 years. 2.5 years to get.
And they were still on the plantation, still working. And let's just be honest, right? They're making money, making this country money. You know, the roots of this country's wealth is on the backs of Black and Indigenous people. So I mean, so like the Emancipation Proclamation was there. It has always been there. It is symbolic. It is the same thing of what's going on here in Louisiana currently. And just going back to the Emancipation Proclamation, and I want to say her name is Henrietta. I got to remember her name. But she is like, she goes back and does a lot of genealogy records, and I'll give you her name. I'm going to look it up in a minute. But people were enslaved into the 60s in Mississippi, 1960, on plantations here in Louisiana and Mississippi, forced to work forced to work. So Emancipation Proclamation been irrelevant, especially in light of the 13th Amendment that says the only way that you can create slaves or enslave a person is by being duly convicted of a crime. And who has been incarcerated? It is Black people. It is brown people. It is poor people. So, I mean, and this year we tried to get rid of that in Louisiana. We had a representative in the state house try to get that language taken out of the Louisiana Constitution, and they flat out said, no, we actually want to keep slaves. We actually want to keep that language in there. So know from which you're working. And for me, if you are a Black person and you're a conjurer and you're not pushing for Black liberation, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
If you are a white person and you are, and I hate to use the word ally, but co-conspirator for liberation, and you're not pushing for to abolish slavery, because that's what we're dealing with. We're still dealing with the mindset that Black people should be enslaved. We still have this disease over white people that believes that I need to be enslaved. So if you're not doing that work, what are you doing? So for me,
it's not a rhetorical question, listeners. I really want you to ask yourselves, what are you doing? It's not a rhetorical question. What are you doing?
No, it's not rhetorical. I just feel like, all of these pretty candles for abundance. I get it. We all got to live. We all got to, have some funds coming in, especially in a pandemic. I get that. Do that work and light you a candle for some Black liberation. Also, there are plenty of spells. Plant a seed. It's springtime. Plant a seed of liberation for Black people. I promise you that seed planting, and see, which is noticed to be true, that seed planting with a divine wish for, Black liberation in your garden, for it to manifest in a way that is whole, healthy, and for Black and brown people, planting a seed that the ice is completely done away with in your garden, for it to flourish beautifully, is a spell. Do that work.
And something that's been so evolutionary for me is learning about Black witches, learning about African traditions, not so that I can practice them, but because everything that I learn reveals the lie of white patriarchal capitalism. Every nugget that I uncover reveals the lie that I was told as a child, as an adult, every day in society.
Right. And that's a revelation right there. That's part of your work. That's part of the magic, is to educate yourself. And I like what you said about studying, African traditional religions, not so you can participate, but so that you can get an understanding as a white person what it meant to hide those things for fear of death for me and my ancestors. Like, it is not your job to join in or, and be in spaces, right, where you're not supposed to be, but in education about what it took to even carry it this far, so that I can say I'm a Black witch in public, because that is right. That's a privilege, one in which I fully understand and unapologetic about stating in public. It's not your job to engage in that. It is your job to just educate so that you know what it took for me to get here.
Yeah. And also an understanding that not everything has to be for me, because that is part of my white, like, not everything has to be for me. And that's fine. We have to get right with that idea that, just because we've been told our entire lives that we have this entitlement to take land, to take, let's go back, like to take, lives.
And to take lives, to take freedom, right, to take all of those things. It is not yours. It is not yours, white people. It is not. But have what's yours, because what's yours is beautiful. It's yours. What is yours is beautiful. Give those things back to Black and Indigenous folks. That is actually their stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how you can tap into your magic. There's so much beauty in Celtic magic. It's beautiful. I don't want it. I want my African magic.
Yeah. Right? Because
I want my African American magic. Yeah. Because that's a real thing. I want that. I want that hoodoo. I want that conjure. I want what my ancestors died to make sure that I persevere and have. And if we all tap into the power and sources that is ours and honor those things that is ours, can you imagine what we could do? Can you even imagine what we could do? They don't stand a chance once we tap into those things that are ours.
Right. And there's also a wealth of things that are not closed. Like you said, planting a seed. There's no, there's no culture that can claim like planting seeds is ours. That belongs to all of us. Astrology is another one. I mean, I'm reading a book right now called Post-Colonial Astrology, which is kind of ripping up what I'm about to say, but the stars are there to behold.
Right. The stars is all of ours. The cosmos. It's all of ours. It's all of ours. The seeds. They're all of ours, except for gumbo. That's ours. Except for yams. That's ours. The black-eyed peas is ours too, y'all. Okay, I've been watching Hound the Hog. There are indigenous plants that clearly come from a certain area, right? That are native to, that location and those people that have cultivated for years and years and years. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a flower, something beautiful, especially if you're trying to tear down power structures that are ugly, right? We're talking about something that's growing, some jasmine, do those things that are accessible to you and are yours to hold, all of ours to hold.
And like you say, I think these are political acts. These are acts of activism. Even if you think like everyone was regrowing our green onions at the beginning of the pandemic, and that to me is such a miracle and amazing to behold. But it's also like addressing food security and the fact that we have been alienated from our food and where it comes from and how it grows.
And medicines, right? And medicines in a time where, some things are restricted because of financial oppression, right? Some poor people aren't getting. Food insecurity can be addressed from that magic. Just all of the things that we have within our power can be addressed. Honey, beekeeping is medicine. Like, it is not, I make salves from the honey. It is not just to sweeten my tea. You can make candle wax. You can make poultices. Like, there's so much. So a root worker isn't just somebody that's throwing dust on somebody's doorstep. She's not somebody that's just burning the candle. She is the medicine woman, or they are the medicine people. It is not just about being a witch and controlling or dominating power, exerting power over people, or things or situations. It is to be and tapped into and to be a wise person and knowing what the earth can produce that is healing and abundant. That's what being a Black witch is for me.
Yeah. And I often find myself sounding conspiratorial, but it is a conspiracy. You know, white supremacist, heteronormative patriarchy wants to divorce us from our power, wants us to divorce us from nature, wants to do all of these things, because then we're fucked. You know, we once all of our power has been stripped from us, then great, you know, great.
Oh, baby,
that's perfect.
It's not a conspiracy. It's a fucking reality.
Yeah, yeah.
Reality.
Yeah.
The reality. When they say, you know, no, you don't have control over your body. No, we're not going to make sure that people don't, you know, have to give you housing if you're LGBTQ person. Like, they can deny you housing. They can deny you a place to work. No, we're not going to raise the minimum wage from $7 an hour or $2.13 if you're a service worker. We're not going to give you no child care. It creates the environment of, you know, complete and total oppression. So that's not a conspiracy. That is actually a reality that is going on in our state and federal legislatures right now. Right now. Yeah. So, you know, it's beyond conspiracy. It is a reality that white people don't want us to survive.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, what's happening in Texas right now, they've decided that, you know, you can't have an abortion like within the time frame it would take you to find out you were pregnant.
6 weeks.
It's like, yeah. I'm not a mother, but most mothers that I know didn't even know they were pregnant until 6, you know.
It takes the time, right? Your missed period. That's 4 weeks.
Yeah.
How long is it taking people to get into a doctor's appointment? Let's be real, especially in a pandemic. How long is it taking you to get into a doctor's appointment? 1-2 weeks? That's your 6 weeks right there. You done for 6 weeks.
And this is what they decided was an important thing to address, like during a pandemic when people are, you know, dealing with poverty and their physical and mental health struggles. And again, this alienation and the Texas government was like, you know, it's really important right now to make sure women don't have control over their bodies. I'm not surprised. I'm never surprised.
Yeah, right. This is, it's the same thing that happened like during the pandemic. They took like when we first last March, was like, we're shutting everything down globally, whatever. Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, Arkansas, Ohio, like this ain't just a Southern thing, y'all. Ohio and some other places took it upon themselves to say, well, you know, abortion clinics are not essential, when everything was like only essential things were opened up, you know, so that people can survive. But abortion clinics, that's not essential, so we're going to close them. What do you mean it's not essential? When you have put a time limit on which people can actually get an abortion, it becomes essential that I get to choose, you know, to get an abortion in the time frame that you have closed up anyway. So how is that not essential? But also, how is it not essential that I get to control my body? Say what I want to happen to it. How is that not essential? Like, it is ridiculous. But also, there are other things. Like at the federal level, there is, right now, I don't know if people are keeping an eye on it, the Voting Rights Act is up. And I'm just like, I was just watching a documentary on, I gotta remember, now listen, Mama keep a lot in her mind, so I don't remember everything, but you can go on YouTube and find it for yourself. where they completely decimated a whole community of people in the 1920s because 2 Black men wanted to vote. And you mean to tell me that in 2021, we have the Voting Rights Act that is up again, while simultaneously in mostly southern states, Republican-held states, Republicans have been pushing efforts to disenfranchise voters down to implementing statewide voter identification laws, purging the rolls because of fake assertions that there was something that happened during Trump, like we stole the vote from Trump. Everybody wanted Trump's ass out of office. Everybody, the world over. Ain't nobody stole the election. You're just mad because Black women organized and got them voters to the polls. So this is the retribution. We see it time and time again. We won. We went to the Supreme Court and won in the June Medical versus Gee, right, case. And now we see Louisiana implementing more restrictive abortion measures. To just yesterday, it was the abortion pill reversal, right? Where we know if let's think about this logically, if you could reverse an abortion, right, you could stop women from miscarrying. How many women miscarry? How many people who are pregnant miscarry? But you couldn't stop that. But you're gonna jeopardize people's lives by insisting that you can stop or reverse an abortion that is already in process. You got to be fools, or you got to be wanting to kill people. And I think it's the latter, or maybe it's a mixture of both. Foolish people who want to kill people.
Yeah, I think people who want to kill people have an easy time getting foolish people to follow them. That's where we get that intersection, you know?
Yes.
I want to read, I won't read the whole paragraph because, it's a long paragraph. But if it's okay with you, I just want to have you, react to something that you wrote. So no spoilers.
Okay, yeah, sure.
This is you. What I think is of most importance in forward movement is the healing. We cannot survive without it. We must be as radical with our healing process as we are with overthrowing the social and political powers. I want you to speak on that, but let me just finish here. We must cease to suffer trauma in silence and alone. We must call out and call in and gather in truth and stand in our magic, period. Yes. Can you speak to all of that?
I think I spoke to it earlier where I said that how I do this is by centering my own healing, right? I am nothing and nobody if I'm not here. I can't do this work if I'm not here, if I'm not fully present in my mind, my body, and my spirit, right? So that is a radical assertion for a Black woman to say, I will shut all of this down if I can't go to the doctor. And I think that the universe heard my statement and was like, listen, I want all y'all to sit the fuck down and really center y'all healing. It's a pandemic. What has this forward movement? I got to get money. I got to get this. I got to get this acquiring things versus centering what it is our community members need and ourselves need, which is healing. So I feel like that energy has thrown us into a crisis of healing so that we can center the healing, right? What is it that we all need is healing. And we lost so many fucking people, right? We lost so many people to the lies of white supremacy, because that's why we lost so many people here in North America. I mean, for people who have, medicine at hand. And we had somebody, because they didn't want to lose money. They did not want stocks to shut down, and they didn't want, to lose an election. They didn't want to grapple with the depth of what this pandemic was, right? And I knew before they even told me, I kept saying, this is airborne. This is airborne. This is not something, like, we really got to be cautious around that. And before they even shut it down, I told my boss, I'm taking my stuff home. I'm going to clean up. I'm going to go and take care of my coven and my kids and make sure that they are safe. And then, I can make sure I'm safe. And then I can make medicine, which I did, start passing out to the community for their safety. So that passage is about centering yourself and your needs, so that you can be fully present for the community. And that is a radical act. That self-preservation of healing is a radical act, but that's also healing justice. And we really need some healing justice. And I don't mean just, like a spa day. I mean a therapy session. I mean, getting back to the roots of our herbs and our medicines. I mean, having poignant conversations in community that can maybe hold, any difficulties or whatever. I mean, holding yourself accountable, those things, that's what I mean.
Holding yourself accountable. I think, when we talk about the spa day kind of self-care, but I think, we really need to get it. Audre Lorde talked about white women's guilt and defensiveness. And that, if you, again,
white fragility.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you really want to address that, as a white person, then start with the man in the mirror. That's what I always say, like, dismantle your own defensiveness, because that's the only way that you can be of any help to anybody else. So self-care, I think, is because it also, I've found this, that, like, the more right people are with themselves, the more comfortable they are, the less they want to attack other people, the less they want to be shitty to other people, because it's just not interesting.
It really isn't. It really is not that fascinating. I mean, and we could do damage as magic folks, right? We could do damage, or we can do radical acts of healing. And that is, and that is a blessing, to understand your power and understand how your power is situated and get to choose what it is you do with that power.
Yes. That's witchcraft, is that choice, right?
That is the witchcraft.
Yeah. So if you could boil down your essential message to, like, a bumper sticker of a catchphrase, what do you think it would be?
Conjuring for Black liberation.
Yes. I love it.
Conjuring unapologetically for Black liberation. I think that would be it. And yeah. And then maybe a second bumper sticker of, I don't know. Let's see, a second bumper sticker of, don't be scared of a Black witch, because some of y'all be so scared of y'all are really scared of a Black woman saying she a witch. Really? I mean, they're scared of witches in general, but they're really scared of a Black woman saying that she is a witch. And I've had even lovers, that would be like, I don't know, like, what do you mean about witch? Are you really a witch? And when they find out I'm really a witch, they're like, I don't know. until I educate them about like what it means, and that I'm not going to make them my eternal slave. Because I think they have that in their mind. Like once she get her paws on you, she's gonna like make you her slave forever and ever. Because that's what media has hyped up a black witch to be.
Right, a voodoo doll, sticking pins,
pins, in you, and all of those things. And when they realize that I am both, and I'm not here to oppress another black person, another black human being, another person, period. I just really want to exist and live and be happy and garden and be in my damn barn and talk to the bees. I really don't want to do all of the work that I'm doing, but white people won't let me fucking be great.
I mean, it would be great if you could stop doing the work, right? Wouldn't that be wonderful if everything was solved and you could just go hang with your bees and not have to worry about liberation anymore?
Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be? Because that's my idea of utopia for me. You know, I just want to go back there and get some honey and drink my tea and put on a honey face mask and soak my feet and talk shit with my people on the phone and do podcasts with Amy. That's all I want to do.
Bless you. I mean, you know, I told you many, many, many times what a role model I consider you to be, again, because of your activism, because of your holistic approach, because of your no bullshit, you know, demeanor, you know, all of those things. But so I'm tempted to say whenever I have these conversations, but that's not true. Specifically today, I just am like, I'm so fucking lucky that I have an excuse to email Lakeesha Harris and say, hey, will you talk to me? Like, before the Missing Witches Project, I would have just been some lunatic saying, like, hi, I'm just a creep who wants to creep on you in your life. But now I have this. Now I have this, and I got to meet you today, and it really... This I can say about every conversation is that it really enforces for me that I am on the right path, that we are all connected, that the web is so vast that we may never understand it, but that doesn't make it any less real.
Yeah, it is interconnected. And I feel like we as witches, specifically because we're on the Missing Witches podcast, have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of healing work to do, and I hope that you are doing your own while you're also conjuring. I hope that for everything that you are conjuring for other people in abundance, that you are also doing that work for yourself. And I also just really hope that you tap in to what's going on in our environment, what's going on in our justice spaces, because there is a need for that. Just whatever you're doing, there are water keepers that are fighting for the water, y'all, fighting for the water. Whatever you're doing, I hope that you're doing in justice and liberation and love witches of all color, of all descent, of all ancestry. I hope that you're doing that work, because that is the crux of what it means to be a witch.
And if you're not, what are you doing? To go back to our non-rhetorical question before, if there isn't a seeking of justice in your witchcraft, I really want you to examine that, listeners. Not because I'm a guru who knows everything, but because what I've learned on my journey is that witchcraft and activism are the
One
same.
and the same. How you think we survived?
Yeah. And that, I think, is a lot of the fear comes from seeing a force so powerful that, you know, to us being scared of the Black Witch, it's like nothing could stop her. We tried everything we could think of to put her down, and yet here we are in 2021 and she lives. Tituba
survived, y'all.
Yeah.
Say that. Tituba survived.
Okay, so my last question is this, and maybe you already answered it with the honey mask, but how are you planning on spending your Juneteenth?
Well, for me, one, I'm still teaching, so I'm teaching, and for me that is definitely an act of liberation that I'm able to do it. For me, I'm always, especially around this season, rereading Black liberation pedagogy and conjure. I tend to sit with a lot of African and African American folk tales surrounding that, because I think I mentioned that my one student was like, I had been looking for Black conjure material, because I think that people who to go to is Catherine Ironwood for hoodoo and conjure, which she makes the statement that she gets her knowledge from African American people, right? But that is not, for me, decolonizing the literature of Black conjure. Decolonizing that literature means like going back into the slave narratives and looking for their words on conjure. And you can read those words and understand what they were talking about. You got to have the knowledge of research and reading between the lines, but you can see where they've held those traditions and was trying to bring them forward in the narrative. So I find myself going back and rereading Frederick Douglass' work. I love the Dark 30s, Supernatural Tales of the South. Like, I read a lot of folk tales. So yeah, that's how I'm gonna spend my my Juneteenth, steep in the narrative of slave folks and the literature of Black freedom fighters.
Amazing. And I will add to that listeners, I do recommend, I think there was only a hardcover version at first because it was like $125. And I was like, I just can't justify. But then the paperback is out now, people, so you can.
I know.
Less. Black Women's Liberatory Pedagogies. Again, Lakeesha contributed a chapter, but the whole thing is really fantastic. So listeners, I will put it in the show notes. You can try to pick that up. But in the meantime, how can our listeners support you if they want to?
Well, so we are on Patreon. I feel like everybody's on Patreon because people have found a way to, sustain themselves in a pandemic. And that is so real. So we are on Patreon as Black Witch University. You can look it up. I usually have it on my Instagram, but we've been doing a lot of work towards decriminalizing sex work in Louisiana with our Deep South Decrim. So that's up. How you can support my work is if you know a sex worker who is in need of funds, give funds to sex workers. So, that is a real thing, especially in the South. You can support my work by contributing to bail funds. I mean, there are people that cannot get out of jail or languishing in jail, and because they don't have the money to get out of jail. So contributing to bail funds would be contributing to my work. Contributing to Black mamas who need doula care. In Chicago, there's an amazing clinic that is about to open up, ran by Black midwives and Black doulas. You can contribute to them, so many ways. If you are contributing to the liberation of Black people, brown people, you are contributing to my work. So, but if you specifically want to give to me, I'm at Black Witch University, and you can go there on our Patreon.
And I'll, of course, put that link in the show notes. The other contributions you'll have to discover on your own, people.
On your own. Google. Google is your friend, people. I tell that all the time. People will inbox me for some stuff you could have Googled. Don't inbox me on stuff you could have Googled.
Because it's the same amount of energy to type it as a question to a person as it is to type it to Google, and then you're not asking anything of anyone. But I do, again, I really appreciate this hour of ungoogleable brilliance that you've shared with me and our listeners today. It's been such an honor and a privilege to meet you and to spend this time with you. I'm so grateful. Happy Juneteenth. Maybe together work toward the making a reality of the Emancipation Proclamation instead of this symbolic nonsense.
And absolutely. Happy Juneteenth, Black people. Know that the white people can never give you freedom. You get your freedom on your own. They will never give it to you. So freedom is something that you create in your mind and make it a fucking reality.
Yeah. The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house.
Never. Thank you.
Thank you for your tools, Lakeesha. And I look forward to hopefully coming and seeing what you've built and your bees and everything. I really can't wait. What I'm most excited about is a hug. I really feel like you give the best hugs. I sense it.
I do. So come on down, get your hug when you can. And thank you for inviting me to Missing Witches.
Thank you.
You must be a witch.
If you want to support the Missing Witches project, you can do so by buying our book, reviewing it on Amazon and Goodreads, using offer code Missing Witches when you shop at Foxglove Farm, become a Patreon patron, or pick up some Missing Witches merch at TeePublic.